My wife cheated with her ex and plotted to steal my $2 million company. But when we got to court, she discovered my mother was the legal owner for 10 years and got nothing. I'm 35 years old. I founded my own tech consulting company 10 years ago. And what happened in the last few months basically showed me that you can marry someone and not know them at all. You know? Like thinking you know who that person is and discovering that it was all an act. I guess I should start from the beginning. I mean, how I met Stephanie and how we got to this point where she basically tried to steal everything I built. I met Stephanie like 4 years ago at a networking event. One of those boring corporate events where everyone pretends to care what you do, but really just wants to sell you something. She worked in public relations for a mid-sized company. Nothing spectacular, but she had her life together. You know what I mean? She was smart, funny, we got along well, and after dating for about a year and a half, we decided to get married. We were 33 and 31 respectively at that time, I think, or something like that. The wedding was small, nothing fancy, because I've always been low-key about those things, and she said she thought it was perfect, that we didn't need to spend a fortune on a party. Looking back, I should have seen it coming when literally 2 months after we got married, she told me she wanted to quit her job. She said she was tired, that the environment was toxic, that she wanted to take some time for herself. And I, like an idiot, told her, sure, no problem, that my income was enough for both of us. The thing is, my business was doing really well. I mean, I had started from scratch 10 years ago, basically from my apartment with a laptop and lots of caffeine, and had turned it into a consulting firm with like 15 employees and contracts with big companies. We weren't Google or anything like that, but we were billing well, and I had killed myself working to get there. 70 hours a week for years, sacrificing weekends, vacations, everything. And I did it. I built something real, something that worked. When we got married, Stephanie knew all this. She knew how hard I had worked, how much it meant to me, and she always said she was proud of me, that she admired my dedication. Total lie, turns out. The first months of marriage were good, I guess, normal. She quit her job and started spending more time at home. She said she was figuring out what to do next, maybe start her own business or study something new. I supported her, told her to take her time, that there was no rush. But after like 6 months, I started to notice something was off. She became distant, cold. We didn't talk like before. When I came home after working all day, she barely looked at me. She was always on her phone, always had excuses not to spend time together. She said she was tired, that she had a headache, that she needed her space. And I thought, well, maybe she's going through something. Maybe she's depressed about not working. I don't know. I tried to be understanding. This went on for like 3 or 4 months, and it kept getting worse. We didn't even eat together most of the time anymore. I'd come home and she had already eaten, or she'd say she wasn't hungry, and she'd lock herself in the guest room with her laptop. She said that was her space to work on her projects, though she never told me exactly what she was working on. I asked her several times if everything was okay, if there was something she wanted to talk about, and she always said no, that everything was perfect, that I was imagining things. Classic, right? When someone tells you you're imagining things, it's because you're definitely not imagining them. And then came the day that changed everything. It was a Saturday morning, like 5 months ago. Stephanie had gone out early, said she was going to the gym and then lunch with a friend. I was home working on some reports because I had a presentation on Monday and I needed to print something. My laptop was updating the system, so I went to the guest room to use Stephanie's. She had never told me I couldn't use it. In fact, before marriage, we shared everything without a problem, but lately that room was like forbidden, you know what I mean? Anyway, I went in, opened her laptop, and there it was. No password, nothing. The screen showing a message conversation with someone named Blake. I'm not one of those people who check their partner's phones or anything like that. Honestly, I've always believed in trust. But when I saw the messages, I couldn't help it. I started reading and felt like the floor disappeared beneath my feet. They were messages between Stephanie and her ex-boyfriend, Blake, a guy she had dated before meeting me. And they weren't messages from years ago. They were from the last few weeks, literally from that same morning. And the content, God. The content was devastating. They talked about seeing each other, how much they missed each other. There were photos that definitely weren't appropriate. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that they were planning something. I sat there reading everything, scroll after scroll, and basically discovered they'd been seeing each other behind my back for like 5 months. 5 months. Since shortly after she quit her job, they'd meet when I was at the office, when supposedly she was at the gym or with friends or running errands. And Blake, this guy, apparently was unemployed and lived in an apartment he paid for. I don't know how, probably his parents or something. And that's where they'd meet. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that, in the messages, they were talking about a plan. A plan to divorce me and take half my business. I'm reading this, and I can't believe it. They're literally discussing legal strategies. Saying things like, she deserves half of everything because she left her career for me, that I owe her for having supported her, that with her share of the business, the two of them could live comfortably. Blake was telling her to find a good divorce lawyer, an aggressive one, who could get her the maximum possible. Stephanie responded, yes, that she had already researched several, that she was just waiting for the right moment. And then there were messages where they basically said that once she had her share of the money, they could be together openly, and I'd be left with nothing. I felt so much rage, so much disgust, that my hands were literally shaking. I took photos of all the messages with my phone, hundreds of screenshots. I wanted to have evidence of everything. And then I just sat there in that room, staring at that laptop, thinking what to do. Do I confront her immediately? Do I wait? Do I talk to a lawyer first? My mind was racing. I couldn't think clearly. Finally, I decided I needed to talk to her. I needed to see her face when I told her I knew everything. Stephanie got home around 3 in the afternoon. She came in all smiles, relaxed, probably coming from being with Blake and not with any friend. She saw me in the living room, and her smile faded a little. I guess my face said it all. I told her, we need to talk, and she put on that worried but fake expression and said, sure, honey. What's wrong? I sat down and asked her directly, who is Blake? And I literally saw the blood drain from her face. She went pale, started stuttering, and tried to say something, but I interrupted her. I said, I know everything, Stephanie. I saw the messages, the photos, the plans, everything. There was silence for like 10 seconds that felt like an eternity. And then, instead of trying to deny it or apologize or show any kind of remorse, you know what she did? She got angry. Like, really angry at me. She yelled at me, how dare I look through her private things, that invading her privacy was unforgivable, that I was controlling and paranoid. I couldn't believe it. This woman had been cheating on me for months, planning to steal my business, and she was angry at me for finding out. I told her to drop the act, that there was no point anymore, and that I wanted her out of the house. That's when she completely changed tactics. Tears appeared out of nowhere. She started saying yes, that it had been a mistake, that Blake had contacted her months ago when she was vulnerable, that she felt lonely because I was always working, that she didn't know what to do. And I told her, Stephanie, I saw the messages. I saw the whole plan you guys have. Don't come to me saying it was a mistake. This is premeditated, calculated. And then the mask fell completely. She wiped her tears, looked at me with a coldness I'd never seen in her, and said, I want a divorce, and I want what I deserve. I asked her what she meant by what she deserves, and she told me she deserved half of everything. The house, the savings, and especially the business. She said she had sacrificed her career to support me, that she had left her job to be available for me, that without her support I wouldn't have been able to focus on the company. I laughed in her face. Literally. Laughed because it was so absurd. I reminded her that she quit her job by her own choice, that I never asked her to, that in fact I suggested several times that she keep working if it made her happy. And I told her something else, something my mother had advised me to do years before I even met her. You see, my mother, Gloria, is a very intelligent woman, very savvy about business. She's like 62 now and worked her whole life in corporate finance. She knows how these things work. When I started my company 10 years ago, she told me, "Son, if you ever get married, protect what you build, because you never know what can happen." And she suggested I put the company legally in her name, with an agreement where I was the CEO and had total control of operations, but she was the official owner on paper. She told me that when she passed away, everything would go to me anyway. But in the meantime, if anything happened in my personal life, the business would be protected. At the time, I thought it was excessive, like, why so much? But my mother insisted, and honestly, I trust her more than anyone, so we did it. All legal, all with lawyers. The company was technically Gloria's property from day one, although I ran it completely. And I had never told Stephanie. I mean, she knew I had founded the company and ran it, but we never discussed the legal details of ownership. Why would I? It's not something that comes up in normal conversation, you know what I mean? So when Stephanie tells me she wants half the business, I smile and tell her, "Good luck with that." And she's confused, asks what I mean. And I tell her things aren't as simple as she thinks, that maybe she should talk to a lawyer before making threats. I saw how the confidence in her face started to crack a little, but she tried to maintain composure and said her lawyers would handle everything, that I couldn't hide anything, that the law was on her side. The next few days were hell. Stephanie kept living in the house. Technically, I couldn't kick her out without a legal order, and the tension was unbearable. She moved around like nothing was wrong, sometimes even singing, like celebrating what she thought she was going to get. I stayed in my room, she in the guest room, and we barely spoke. I hired a lawyer immediately, one recommended by a friend who had gone through a complicated divorce, and I showed him all the screenshots of the messages. My lawyer was impressed with the evidence, said it would help a lot. About 2 weeks later, we had the first mediation session. There were 4 of us. Me with my lawyer, Stephanie with hers, a guy in his 50s, in an expensive suit who looked exactly like the typical aggressive divorce lawyer. The session started with Stephanie's lawyer presenting their demands. Half of all marital assets, including 50% of the company, plus alimony because she had sacrificed her career. My lawyer listened very calmly, taking notes, without interrupting. When I finished talking, my lawyer took out some documents and put them on the table. They were the ownership papers of the company, showing that the legal owner was my mother, not me. He explained that the company had been established under Gloria's name since its founding, 10 years before Stephanie and I met, and therefore it was not a marital asset subject to division. I'll never forget the expression on Stephanie's face. It was like watching someone who thinks they won the lottery discover the ticket is fake. Her mouth opened. She looked at me with pure hatred, and then looked at her lawyer as if expecting him to tell her it wasn't true. Stephanie's lawyer took the documents, reviewed them, and I could see how his expression changed too. He whispered something to her. She whispered something back, and then he asked for a recess to discuss with his client. During the recess, my lawyer told me that was basically it, that without the business to divide, she could only fight for minor assets, and maybe some very limited alimony, considering we'd been married less than 3 years. I asked him if the messages, the infidelity, the plan with Blake, affected anything, and he told me it depended on the judge, but it definitely didn't make her look good. When they came back from recess, the atmosphere had completely changed. Stephanie's lawyer was clearly upset, probably because he realized the case wasn't going to be the financial windfall he expected. Stephanie looked furious and on the verge of tears. Her lawyer tried to argue that even though the business was in my mother's name, I had contributed value during our marriage that should be compensated, but my lawyer quickly dismantled it, explaining that my salary from the company had already funded our lifestyle, that she hadn't contributed anything to the business, and that in fact, she had stopped working by her own choice. Stephanie exploded. She started screaming that this was a trap, that I had planned this from the beginning to trick her, that she deserved something for having been with me. And I just looked at her thinking, seriously? She's accusing me of planning something when she literally conspired to rob me? The mediator had to ask her to calm down several times. Finally, her lawyer said they needed time to review their options, and they ended the session. The following weeks were a nightmare of a different kind. Stephanie, finding herself without real legal options, decided to go the route of destroying my reputation. She started posting things on social media, nothing directly specific to avoid legal trouble, but hints about abusive, manipulative men who control their wives and leave them with nothing. Mutual friends started asking me what was going on, some clearly on her side without knowing the full story. I sent screenshots of the messages to the ones I considered really close, and when they saw the evidence, obviously, they understood the situation. But it was still exhausting, having to justify yourself to everyone. Stephanie also tried to make the process as expensive and complicated as possible. She requested financial audits of everything, requested that my mother be subpoenaed as a witness, alleging that the ownership arrangement was fraudulent and designed specifically to avoid giving assets in a future divorce. My lawyer said this was common, that when people realize they're not going to get what they want, they try to make the process so painful that the other party is willing to pay just to make it end. But I wasn't willing to give her anything beyond what was legally appropriate. We got to court after like 3 months of this. The day of the hearing, Stephanie arrived, dressed all conservative, with a turtleneck sweater and her hair pulled back, acting like the betrayed wife. Her lawyer presented their case, painting her as a woman who had sacrificed everything for her marriage, who had left a promising career in public relations to support her husband, and who now found herself with nothing after he decided to end the relationship. They didn't even mention the infidelity. Obviously, they acted as if I had asked for the divorce out of nowhere. When it was my lawyer's turn, he presented all the evidence. The messages between Stephanie and Blake, showing not only the affair but the premeditated plan for divorce. The business ownership documents, demonstrating it had been in my mother's name since long before the marriage. Financial records showing that during our marriage, she hadn't contributed economically at all, and in fact had lived completely off my income after voluntarily leaving her job. And testimonies from me and my mother explaining that the business ownership arrangement wasn't recent or done to avoid a divorce, but something established for family financial planning reasons years before. The judge, a woman about 60, who looked like someone who had seen it all in her career, listened to both sides without expression. When the presentation's finished, she took like 5 minutes to review the documents in silence, and then spoke. She said it was clear the business was not a marital asset, and therefore not subject to division. She said that while she understood Stephanie had left her job during the marriage, this had been a personal decision, and there was no evidence she had been pressured or that her contribution to the household justified significant compensation given the short duration of the marriage. And then, almost as if she was irritated, she mentioned the evidence of infidelity and divorce planning for financial motives, saying this clearly demonstrated the plaintiff's true intentions. The ruling was that Stephanie would receive a minor portion of our joint savings, basically what was in our shared bank accounts, which was like $50,000, and that's it. Nothing from the business, nothing from the house that was in my name from before the marriage, no alimony. The judge said Stephanie was 33 years old, perfectly capable of working, and that she should look to resume her career. The hearing ended, and when we left the courtroom, Stephanie gave me a look that if it could kill, I'd be dead right there. That was like a month ago. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks ago. All papers signed, everything official. Stephanie took her $50,000 and, from what I know, she moved in with Blake to an apartment downtown, one they definitely won't be able to afford for long with what she has and him without a job. My mother called me the day the final papers were signed and told me, "See, that's why you plan ahead." And she's right. Literally, that arrangement we made 10 years ago saved me from losing half of everything I built. Do I feel anything for Stephanie? I don't know. It's weird. Part of me feels sorry, like she really believed she was going to get away with it, and now she has nothing, not the money she expected, and probably not a stable relationship with Blake because those things based on lies and money schemes never work. But another part of me, the biggest part, just feels relief that it's over, that she's out of my life, that I can move forward without that toxicity. I've started therapy because even though I came out okay legally, emotionally, this was devastating. Discovering that the person you married never really loved you, that they only saw you as a paycheck. The business is better than ever, ironically. I think all the stress made me work harder to distract myself, and we closed several big contracts in these last months. My mother says I should take a vacation, disconnect a bit, and she's probably right. Maybe I'll go somewhere next month, to a beach or something, to process all this. And eventually, I guess I'll trust someone enough again to have a relationship, but not soon. Definitely not soon.